Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that the right book at the right time can change lives, and that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do here on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature: picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels for readers of all ages. In each episode, we'll talk with children's literature authors and discuss their books, their hopes, their dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. Whether you're an adult reading to their inner child or connecting the young readers in your life with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. So grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back to another bookish conversation with a children's literature author. Today, I'm talking with Rosanne Parry. Rosanne has written multiple books for middle grade readers that center on wild animals and their struggle to survive in a dangerous and changing world. Books like A Wolf Called Wonder, A Whale of the Wild, A Horse Named Sky, and the book she's here to talk about today, A Wolf Called Fire, a wilderness survival story of the wolf pup known as Warm, and illustrated in beautiful black and white illustrations throughout. It had me turning the pages in admiration for what Rosanne's words were allowing me to actually experience, and I can't wait to talk about it. So let's get to it. Rosanne, welcome to KidLit Love. I am so glad you're here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to talk to you.
I am too. Your book just had me immersed in an experience I didn't think I would ever be able to have because of your words and just the beauty that you have painted on the page. But before we get to the book, I would love for you to talk about your work, talk a
Mhm.
little bit about your books, your journey through children's literature, and I'm hoping you're going to mention your treehouse somewhere in there.
Well, I've been so fortunate to spend most of my life in Oregon, and there are many things I love about being here. One of them being that the wilderness is so close to me. There is woods and trees and hiking and camping all around, and the coast, the mountains, the desert. There are so many choices. And I have loved the wilderness. I even love the wilderness of my backyard, right? I'm lucky enough to live in a lot that has lots of trees, and so I work in a tree house in the summer, right? Which
Love
gosh, I
that.
started. I know it's the best. I started when my children were 4, 7, 10, and 13. And it
Wow.
was perfect because I didn't really want to be away from them, but I also didn't want to open every jar of peanut butter, you know.
Right,
So
right.
I was close enough that if they needed me, they could just holler. But if they didn't, they could do their own thing, and it was the perfect solution for that. And I just loved being outside when I'm writing. I'm not really a sit still kind of person anyway.
Yeah.
And so having loved that outdoor experience in my life and even treasuring it in my writing days, I wanted to bring some of that love for the wilderness to young readers. Because, gosh, childhood is a more urban experience than it's ever been before, ever. And um, and yet I know that human beings are hardwired to protect what we love, right? So what I really want is for children to feel this emotional connection to the wilderness and to love it. And I mean, some families hike and camp. I mean, partly we camped because that was the vacation we could afford.
Right,
Right.
right.
Um, but some kids don't have access to the wilderness, but I'm just hoping to, it's that line and reel to tempt them into the wilderness someday if they're not there now. And so that's part of what I'm hoping for with these books is just for kids to feel that connection to wild things, wild animals, and yeah.
Well, this reader did. And
Okay.
this reader was the girl who grew up wanting to be as far away from nature as she could possibly get. I was just
Mhm.
never that kind of kid. I would read outside, but that's as close as I got. And I really had a fear around it almost of like the wilderness and oh my gosh, what are the animals? And could something get hurt? And could sting me? And can it, make me itch? And I was just one of those worry wart kind of a
Okay.
kids. I've done much better in my adult life, appreciating nature,
Yeah.
the role it plays, how important it is. Uh,
Mhm.
and I really didn't think, though, until reading your book, that I could actually appreciate wolves or
Mhm.
their way of living or the cycle of nature. I didn't think that I could ever understand it. I could wrap my head around it. And my goodness, your writing did that. I was really surprised at the emotions I was having around an animal that literally would panic me if I
Yeah.
ever saw it in person. So I think your philosophy of getting kids to love it so they protect what they love. I love how you said that.
Mhm.
It's working.
Good.
It's working.
Good, good, good. Yeah, I have to chuckle whenever I'm describing my research adventures to my colleagues at HarperCollins. They're like, "Be careful, the wilderness. Oh no."
Right.
They're very nervous about the wilderness for me. But then, when I'm out there talking to park rangers and ranchers and farmers and range specialists and all the people that I talk to when I'm doing my research, they're like, "Your publisher's in New York City? Oh my God, you got to be careful if you're going to go there." Right? You know, that very human tendency to other the thing that is unfamiliar to us,
Yes.
right? That's what I think. Gosh, I think a book is just an empathy machine,
Mhm.
and so on all kinds of books, I think the value of having them and the danger in banning them is that they make what frightens us more known.
Yeah.
So the truth is, there are risks in both the city and the wilderness. That's right.
Right.
But I hope that readers will come to love and treasure and respect the wilderness, just as we should love and treasure and respect our cities, right?
Yeah.
There are things going on there, and there's their own wildlife experience in the cities too. So, oh,
Absolutely. Yeah, I love how you just so beautifully pointed that out. It is usually just what is unknown to you.
mhm.
And books
Yeah,
allow that unknown to be experienced on such a personal and emotional level that you really can't, or at least I don't look at things the same once I have
yeah,
experienced them in the book. And that is that empathy building machine
mhm,
that you are talking about.
yeah,
So powerful. Now, you mentioned your research. I would love to
mhm,
ask you about that because, as I mentioned, I felt like I was
mhm,
literally there in the pack. I
mhm.
was ready to run. I was ready to hunt. I was just so taken aback at how involved I really was in there. And I know that I've heard that quote that hard writing makes for easy reading. And I imagine there is a great deal of research and all sorts of experience that comes into it. I'd love to have you talk about what you have to do as a writer, what you do as a writer in your research, in your world, to be able to bring that level of immersiveness to the reader. How do you do that?
Well, I'm very fortunate in that all the places in A Wolf Called Fire and A Wolf Called Wander, who happen in the same setting, and my other wilderness books too. I'm very fortunate that those places are almost entirely public land, right? They're national parks or state parks or
Yeah.
national forests, BLM lands, but they're places I can go. So everywhere that is in the story, I have hiked and camped and walked around and I love that. I love the access that we have to those lands, especially in the American West. And I really need it to sort of wrap my head around what these different ecosystems mean to an animal. When I'm up in the Wallowa Mountains, which is where Fire Story begins, that's deep alpine wilderness and the trees, and it has a particular smell, and the ground, it's thousands of years of leaves and needles falling, and so that ground is soft and spongy, and you step on it and it releases a little poof of smell, right? When you step on the ground because of all that leaf and needle litter that's, down there. But then you go out to the Zumwalt Prairie, that high altitude prairie, um, where he goes looking for his brother. And that's an entirely different thing, right? It's a bunch grass prairie, so grass grows in clumps, but then there's bare, hard dirt in between, completely different feel. So I do like walk around in my bare feet a little bit and really ask myself, what does this ground feel like?
Hmm.
And when I get my head right down where a wolf's head would be, what does it smell like? What can I hear when I'm really like making
Right.
myself as wolf-like as I can be? What do I hear that I wouldn't notice if I'm just, walking around like a human being would? And I love that, right? Or coming to the edge of Hell's Canyon. I was so happy that I could include it in the story because Hell's Canyon is so much deeper than the Grand Canyon, so much deeper. And it is not a tourist place at all.
Right.
There aren't, there aren't the big facilities. So my husband and I drove up in our little adventure van to an overlook, which is where I based the final scenes of the book on. Nobody there when we got there. We overnighted in a campground with zero other people. There were no people there in the morning. It was
Wow.
just completely empty. It was fabulous. It was like May. It was like perfect weather and time for camping. There just was nobody up there. And so I love that and the vastness of that space. And yeah, it was just amazing. And I was happy to see it. And there had been a forest fire there recently. So we drove through many, many miles of burned forest
Mm.
before we got to the edge of the canyon. And so that also became part of the story there.
Right. So you literally immerse yourself there so that you can immerse us in
Yeah.
in there as well. You talked about
Yeah.
other forms of research too. Do you talk to others? Are you, is your head in the books for you too of this life cycle for these particular animals?
Yeah, I do read a lot. I probably read 20 or 30 books for every book that I write.
Yeah.
And I try and talk to people as well. It was my great good fortune to speak to Rick McIntyre in the last year, who is, gosh, he's like the Jane Goodall of wolves. He's this former park ranger who has spent more than 10,000 days observing and recording the behavior of wolves in the wild in Yellowstone Park. A little bit in Alaska, but almost entirely in Yellowstone Park. And it's just amazing the depth of his understanding of their behavior. You could write an opera about these wolves. I'm telling you, because a wolf's life is relatively short, right? The ones who make it to their first year, most of those only live to be 5 or 6 years old. And they're not old enough to lead a pack until they're 2 years old. So so there's lots of turnover and churn in the leadership of a pack. And so some wolves that take over the leadership are like mean and domineering and make everybody submit to them. But then some of them have a much more collegial approach, and some are super strategic and form alliances in an interesting way. And truly, I'm just waiting for someone to write an opera about all of this because the drama, it's amazing. Um, so yeah, so people like that, I love talking to them and their insights about how things go. I had an opportunity May a year ago to observe the oldest wolf mother Yellowstone has ever had. Last May, I was watching her bring her pups out of the den for the first time. She was 11 years old.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
I know. more than twice the average lifespan of a wolf. That was amazing. Yeah.
Wow.
So apparently her secret is to choose a mate who's very young and fanatically devoted to her. It's like, oh, that's interesting strategy
Right.
for my life.
I'm glad you mentioned that leadership style though, because and listeners, I promise we'll give you a background about the book in a moment, but I really was surprised at those differences because in the
Mhm.
book you learn about one pack and how they work, and then another pack and how they work, and then how packs cross and uncross and cross things that I never would have known. I never would have appreciated the the level of intelligence
Mhm.
that's there that I certainly was not considering um, before. And so, all that research that you've done, or just being there and kind of getting your head in it.
Mhm.
Gosh, yeah, I keep saying it, but I really was just so shocked at how easy it was for me to sink myself into the
Yeah.
book, which we should probably tell them about because we're
Yes.
skirting around it. Let's take the title head on. So, A Wolf Called Fire, which
Mhm.
is a standalone companion book, right? Would you say
Yeah.
to your other books? Could you tell listeners a bit about this book for those that haven't gotten their hands on it yet?
Sure. So A Wolf Called Wander and A Wolf Called Fire are companion books in that they're about two pups from the same litter of wolf pups. Um, and Wander in the first journey is the pup who, when an enemy comes to their home ground, and kills their alpha, he runs away. And so that book is the story of his journey of finding a new place to live and a new pack to be with. Um, Fire story. Fire is the Omega pup. That means the lowest ranking pup in a pack. He was the Omega pup in his pack, but he is the one, when that enemy wolf comes, he's the one who's left with the following year's pups
Hmm.
to raise all on his own. And so he's like, wait a minute, I am the least capable
Yeah.
hunter. I'm like, what am I going to do? He's just initially completely sort of floored by the responsibility of it. He's very bonded to those pups. He really loves them, but he's filled with doubt about his ability to lead them. And what I really wanted in the story was for him to come into his own kind of leadership, because there isn't just one way to be a leader of a wolf pack. And what I think is so fascinating about wolves is that there are different successful strategies for a wolf. And Fire picks a strategy that's modeled on a strategy chosen by Wolf 8 from Yellowstone. Um, and that wolf had been an Omega pup himself, came out of that experience with oceans of compassion for young pups. And so when he encountered a pack that was in trouble, that needed an alpha, instead of trying to court the alpha female, he just started straight away mentoring the pups and teaching
Yeah.
them how to hunt, little things and then big things, with lots of patience and compassion. And because he was so good to them, those pups were very devoted to him, grew up to be much larger than him because they had their biological father was a much bigger wolf. But because they were so devoted to this alpha, they became an impressive hunting machine, right? And instead of leaving, because wolves have the option to leave when they're adults, and if they like their home pack and the way things are going, they can stay. But if they don't care for how it's going, they can leave and try some other place, right? And but all of his pups stayed because they really loved him,
Yeah.
and he became in time this patriarch of the most powerful wolf packs in Yellowstone Park, right? Because he chose this different, more compassionate, more collaborative approach to leadership.
Yeah.
And the thing that's cool historically is that you can see wolves can look around and go, well, what's going in that pack over there is really working. I think I'll go join them. Or, oh, look, this other pack tried a different thing and now they're all dead. Let's not do that. Let's not do that thing.
Right.
So they have the ability to learn not just from their own experience, but to look around at different packs and go, what really works and what do I want to choose? And that's great, right? And I love that also for my young readers. I want them to really think about what leadership styles are out there and what can I choose? And if I'm in a situation where the leadership style is not working, what can I do about that?
Right.
So,
And that was the unexpected piece of learning for me,
mhm,
with how much I was underestimating this particular animal, and how they work. But what I also love about the book is it is this amazing, nature adventure survival story. But there are so many things that could parallel what we think about as humans, right? There's sibling relationships. Even
mhm,
though we're humans and not wolves, there is
yeah.
the family element, the community element, the respect piece, just the cycle of how things work.
Mhm,
So you're getting both. You're getting this amazing
mhm,
adventure into the animal world while at the same time being able to think of how it applies to you as
mhm.
a human reader,
Yeah.
which was really exciting too.
Yeah, it's fun. I know people are like, you shouldn't personify animals. And there are good reasons not to assume that an animal is having the same feelings or motivations that I might have. But I think, and what many scientists have told me also is there is a danger in reserving human emotions and motivations for only humans and saying that, I mean, these are social animals, right?
Right.
They run into the same complexities and problems and issues that we run into, right? And so um, that's a kind of arrogance too, to say, no, I'm only going to reserve these
Right.
motivations and emotions for human beings. Um, when there's ample evidence that we share a lot of emotional similarity with social animals.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. So,
There's two things I want to point out that accompany the book and make the book, I think. And the first is that I am the kind of reader who reads everything. So starting
yeah.
with the dedication all the way to the end to the acknowledgments, I just love to read it all. And so when I see, back matter that expands on the story, I love that. And I just want listeners to know there is so much that comes with that. You've got the real wolf behind the story, which you talked about, Wolf 8, in our conversation here. We've got a map to help visualize. We have information about wolves in the wild and real pictures to help us imagine and visualize it. We've got, different elements of nature that are there with these illustrations that connect it. So for other readers who appreciate that extra information, I
Mhm.
loved that connection in the back. And that's where I could really see, okay, Rosanne does her research because it's there for us to enjoy.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that Green Willow gives me that extra space in the book to do the nonfiction
Mhm.
piece. Having been a teacher myself, I do have some notion of what teachers need a book to do in the
Yeah.
classroom. And also, I mean, you know how a 10-year-old loves to tell you a fact, right? So I know kids love nonfiction too.
Yeah.
Don't always pick it up. And so I'm also hoping that in giving them a little taste of this is some of the cool stuff that nonfiction can do, that they'll then go look for nonfiction themselves, entire books. And there's brilliant children's nonfiction is some of my
Me too.
favorite reading. And so I'm sort of hoping to tempt them over in that direction as well. Um, yeah, so I'm just grateful that there's stuff there to help them think about it more broadly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always loved as an educator, parents would ask, what's the best thing to do after reading a book? What's the best book I could get? I'm like,
Mhm.
it's the book that's going to lead to the next one. to the
Mhm.
next piece of information, to the next fun rabbit hole, to the next book in the series, or just the next interest. And you're right, that pairing of the fiction with the nonfiction in the back, it gives a spark to both kinds of readers and
Yeah,
what they prefer. And I think that is so much fun when as a reader you can just get lost in those little rabbit holes of things
yeah.
you didn't know you wanted to know about.
Right, right. And for some kids, they like to read the back matter first,
Right.
right? Have a little more context for the story. And I know some teachers too, especially if they're in a really urban situation and they know their students aren't necessarily going to grasp what this ecosystem is. They'll like read the ecosystem sections first before they get into
Yeah.
the rest of it, just for a little context.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But there's another element of your book that gives lots of context and helps, I think, just immerse the reader in this wilderness world. And that is these beautiful black and white illustrations. And so I want you to talk about that, what you think it does for the book, how happy you are that they're there, and
Mhm.
to make sure we give your illustrator the credit that Monica deserves.
Yes, Monica Arminio is the illustrator of both A Wolf Called Fire and A Wolf Called Wander. I absolutely adore her work. It's amazing. It has it has depth and it just really she's great at capturing the emotion in these animals. Like horses are great at making facial expressions, right? They have a very mobile face. Like wolves, not so much. Right? There are fewer things they can do with
That's
their
very
face.
true.
But but she's great at capturing the whole body language expression that wolves have and the nuances of the ecosystem, which considering that she has never been to the United States, as far as I understand, um, is great that she's able to sort of capture depth and realism. I go through when we're doing the handover of text to the illustrator, I try and go through each chapter and write down both the common name and the scientific name of all the animals and plants that are important in each chapter. Because, for example, badgers in Europe are adorable, right? And Monica is from Madrid, right, in Spain. So so European badgers, adorable, cute, cuddly animals, showing up in folks and fairy tales. But if you know anything about American badgers, they're awful. Oh my
Not
God,
so much.
they're mean and combative and super smelly and
Yeah.
and they look completely different, right?
Right.
And so making sure that she has what she needs so that she gets the correct species. But then she really dives in on the research and looks at a bunch of, models, and she's so right on with her details being, I mean, to make something both correct and beautiful, amazing. I can barely draw a bath, so I'm in awe.
I'm working on my stick people. So I'm with you in the appreciation for her. The ability to bring those animals to life, as you said, emotionally in that way, with the expressions, the other animals, just feeling even the action
Yeah.
on the page. I mentioned before we hit record, I think though my favorite thing that she did or the two of you did was every so often you'll turn the page and it will be this double page spread or maybe half of a double page spread that is in the dark.
Yeah.
And everything just changes where the background's black and the text is white and you just feel the shift
Mhm.
in the book. And that was such the first time it happened, I got my sticky notes out. It was like, oh, wow, what an impact on how I'm feeling about it. And then I couldn't wait to see where those elements would pop up. Uh,
Yeah.
and it was such a powerful technique for the book.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I have learned in writing about animals is this whole sleep all night, be awake all day is a very distinctly human thing. Hardly any animals do that.
Yeah.
Most of them sleep a couple hours, wake, sleep, wake. And so most animals are up in the dark all the time.
Yeah.
So having those illustrations that really capture what they're doing in those darker moments or in those darker places that was really great that she was able to capture that.
I think humans could learn a thing or two from the restfulness that our natural world provides.
Exactly. Exactly. Is it hot out? Maybe lie down.
Yeah, that's right. Let's just take a break.
Yeah. Take a snooze.
So
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
when you think about your books in general, but I would say specifically about the one that we're talking about today, what is your hope for readers that when they get this book in their hands and they finish, they experience it, they close the book, what is your hope for what they might take away from it specifically, but also in general, just your belief about teaching kids to really appreciate this part of nature?
Well, my big agenda, I have to say, is literacy. I'm a huge fan. And so, I mean, any kid who finishes a book is a better reader when they
Mhm.
get there, right? And so that strength of reading just from, tracking those words across the page and thinking deeply about it. I love that, right? That they're growing as a reader and that I want them to be curious about the world, right? I hope that they think about the benefits of clean air and clean water and protections for wildlife. One of the things that I talk to children about all the time when I'm in a school visit is the power that writing can give them. One of the reasons that I wrote about Mustangs and A Horse Named Sky is because um, they were the same, those Mustangs were from the same Virginia range where Wild Horse Annie first started crusading for protection for wild horses because it used to be legal to hunt them for sport. Can you imagine? And sell their bodies for dog food. It's
Oh,
terrible, right? Horrifying. Think of all we owe to horses historically in this country. How would we have even
right.
been the country we are without horses? Right. And so Wild Horse Annie was horrified about this. She wrote to her newspaper, and there wasn't a single adult who cared. But children wrote back to her and said, "This is terrible. We should do."
Yes.
So she went from school to school to school talking to children about the plight that wild horses were in. And so those school children, grade school children, as young as first and second grade, wrote to their senators, their congresspersons, the president, the secretary of the interior, their governors. They wrote all of these letters, thousands upon thousands of them. And in 1973, the United States passed the Wild and Free Roaming Horses and Burros Protection Act. It is the only legislation I know of that was passed entirely on the advocacy of children. There's no money to be made off of these horses. There was no constituency that said, we want this. It was children who wrote down what they thought and changed the laws of their country. And that's real power.
Yeah.
And for people who can't vote, who don't pick where they live or go to school or any of those things, writing is the most power a child can have.
Yeah.
And so that's the other thing that I really hope for them is that they will um, see the possibility of writing and do the hard. It's hard to learn to write, man. It's just, and English is a hard language,
Yeah.
but that they'll really dig in there and go, yep, this is an avenue to power. This is an avenue to accomplish
Hmm.
what I want to accomplish in life. Because most of them aren't going to write books, but all of them will be stronger if they write well.
Yeah.
So that's also my sort of secret agenda.
Oh, I will hop on that soapbox with you. I as an educator, that is exactly what I have spent my entire life doing is just show kids the power that reading
Mhm.
and writing has personally in their lives. And as you mentioned, like kids who care are
Mhm.
change makers.
Yep.
And books like this and the reminder of the power that they hold to change our minds. And then what happens when we take that power and we put pen to paper?
Yeah.
It's like a goosebump kind of experience. I just loved hearing you talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So what else might be coming. This agenda of yours, I imagine, is going to keep going and going. So are there any things you're working on that you could give us a sneak peek into?
I am. So I have begun the writing. I've got a ways to go on it, so it's going to take a minute. But I've started writing another Voice of the Wilderness novel, and this one is from the point of view of a raven, which has been lots of fun to work on. I've been very excited about that one. And then I think Green Willow hopes in the future to have a nonfiction picture book companion to each of these books. So the picture book, The Wolf Effect, is a companion book for A Wolf Called Wander and A Wolf Called Fire. The next one we want to work on as a companion book to The Whale of the Wild is one about river restoration and what happens when you take a dam off of a river. And that's a huge project in the American West. And so I'm super excited to write about that. And so that's my hope too, is have these nonfiction picture books that go alongside.
I love that personally. It plays into what we said before when one book leads you to another, which brings you even further down that rabbit hole. I mean, paired text, I love theme text.
Yeah,
Oh, that's wonderful. That's an exciting addition.
yeah, I'm excited about it. I think
Yeah.
it'll be cool. So
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, where can listeners, if they want to find out more about you, your backlist, your books, what you're up to, where's the best place to find you online?
online, I have a website at rosanneparry.com, RosanneParry.com. So I'm pretty easy to find there. I'm on Instagram, Rosanne Parry. So that's the best place to find me. On my website also, for kids who want to write to me, I have the address of the bookstore where I work. I'm a part-time bookseller at Annie Bloom's Books in Portland. So readers who want to write to me can write to me at the bookstore. And if you want a signed or personalized copy, also if you go to the bookstore and order a book there, we'll ship anywhere in the United States, and I can sign and personalize any of my books there. So yeah, those are the places.
So I thought you had the coolest job ever writing these books, but now I know you have two of the coolest jobs ever, which are writing them and then being in a bookstore. That's just like my dream life right there.
Yeah, I do love it. I do love
Yeah.
it. Booksellers are fun, and it's a great way to keep a connection with the reading community
Yeah,
and see what they're really looking for in a book. And yeah,
that is exciting. Well,
yeah.
thank you so much for spending time with us today, talking about you, your work, your passion, your books. A Wolf Called Fire. I will be sure to put all of the links that we talked about, your website, Instagram, and of course, links to the books mentioned in the show notes today to make it as easy as possible for people to find it. Thank you so much. This was such a wonderful conversation.
Yeah.
I do thank you for the chance to have the experience I had in
Yeah.
your book. It does change things.
Oh, good. Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of KidLit Love, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all of the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. You'll also find KidLit Love on Substack. That's where you'll find posts for each episode, monthly KidLit roundups, and an invitation to join my summer book club and go deeper into the world of children's literature. And if you loved this podcast and want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing to build a life you love. One more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of Kid Lit Love. Thanks for listening.